AIM's been around for 100 years, and there are all sorts of things that we've learned in those 100 years. One of the things that we've learned is that Massachusetts is a very different place today than it was 100 years ago. One thing I would observe is that the pace of the accelerated pace of economic change is picking up. And the economy that we see today is different than the economy we saw 2 years ago, 4 years ago. So I applaud particularly the Speaker for putting a jobs bill very high on the agenda for this session. I think it's a good thing for the legislature to return to the notion of what does Massachusetts need to do to be competitive and to create jobs and to make Massachusetts the type of place where private sector folks want to invest. I guess I would suggest that I have 3 recommendations for the committee, and since I've testified this way before, this may sound like material you've heard before. The first thing is to first do no harm. I think that's a principle as legislators that you try to observe all the time, particularly in your role as members of the General Court. You try to balance different interests. The first principle of doing no harm is one that I think makes a lot of sense. Second, I would ask you, I would beg you, to examine the Massachusetts-only costs of doing business. Our members, about 4,500 of them here in the Commonwealth from all over the state, are competing not just with other states, but they're competing with other jurisdictions all around the world. And to the extent that Massachusetts imposes costs on them that they don't have to deal with elsewhere, that makes them less competitive. That means they're less likely to invest, they're less likely to hire. And these problems endure in areas like health insurance, electricity, taxation, HR, and labor law, all things that in other places have been dealt with. But I think to the extent that this bill represents an opportunity to address those issues in a more comprehensive way, I think it's a great vehicle. And third, and most importantly, and I know you all do this, listen to employers. Listen to the folks who sign the front of the check. They have hard-won and hard-fought wisdom that we should incorporate into our public policy wherever possible. Regarding the testimony that I provided, our process every year at the beginning of the session is to survey our members, ask them what they think we should include as part of our legislative agenda. It's all in there. It's kind of like a big menu. Pick whatever you think is appropriate. I do want to highlight 2 things that are critically important. One is the R&D tax reform. I think the governor started the conversation in filing the legislation. We'd like to see that included in a final version of the bill, perhaps a little bit more expanded, a little bit adjusted. There's a report coming out next week that shows that Massachusetts, which used to have a very powerful R&D success rate in terms of private sector R&D spending, we're losing that market share. And part of the reason is other jurisdictions have improved their R&D tax credit while ours has stayed pretty much the same. So if we want to try to attract more research and development, private sector research and development into Massachusetts, I think that's an issue that we need to look at, and I'd be happy to work with the committee staff and with you on making that happen. And lastly, with regard to non-competes, we did send up a letter a week ago that details AIM's position. I would say a couple of things that you've heard before, but just in summary, we did survey our members. Several hundred of them responded, not one suggesting they supported the ban on non-competes. Those responses came from all over the Commonwealth. They came from all different types of industries and businesses, both in terms of size and in terms of the segment of the industry that they were in. And not one member reached out to us to say that they supported the outright ban on non-competes. So I just wanted to come up and say that to you. If you need more information on that, again, happy to work with you on where they are and why they are there. But it's a very wide variety of members all over the state who do not support the approach that the governor has recommended.